Hey folks, just eating a bagel, sorry. Welcome to the setup of this cruiser by Crafter. So Crafter cruiser, kind of Les Paul Junior double cut thing. And a really interesting guitar, this one. For a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, the way I got it, somebody selling on eBay who thought it was new because it still had some plastic covers on the pickups and the scratch plate, which is quite common, just like people leave the plastic on their car seats. Some people leave the plastic on the pickups and the scratch plate and the back panel, which I can't stand personally, but hey. So the guy thought it was new. I think he probably sold it as unplayed, and I bought it conscious that there was a ding somewhere there. Not a huge one, tiny one in fact, a little ding there. But I got it, and I just hung around until it went down, and the guy accepted a decent price for it. And sure enough, when I got it, it turned out to be anything but new. And you can see, well, not very well right now, but there's lots of telltale kind of grime marks built up on this thing, even though it still had the plastic on, but the plastic was clearly very old, so it had been played in that sort of state. Anyway, apart from that, it's a fabulous little guitar, and the seller was really willing to accept, not feedback exactly, I just let him know that it wasn't new, but it was not a problem for me, but perhaps he just hear a couple of things to look out for in future, which to his credit he was very, what's the word, dignified, you know what I mean, polite about, and thankful. So anyway, what we have is a two P90s thing in a nice sort of simple punk style 1970s tastic design guitar. Unlike the actual Les Paul versions, which have a single wraparound bridge instead of the tunematic and stop piece, this has the two bits, but it doesn't stop it being great fun, and it's fabulous to play. Action's a bit high for my liking, and the frets are not great, and the action down here isn't perfect. Not too bad. Nice quality tuners, Crafter stamped on them, serial number, which I think I'll take off because it's just a bit ugly. I'll put my own on. And a good clean-up all round. So the fret job, good clean-up. It's a bolt-on, which is a nice bolt-on. It's got the sort of ferrules that hold the thing on rather than a plate. I think it looks really good. It's very tidy looking all round. So without further ado, I'm just going to pile into getting these strings off it, which I will chuck away. They're currently, I think, they may be 10s. No, they're 9s, I think. I don't know. Whatever. Either which way, they'll get replaced, and I won't try and keep these. I've got a few spare sets already, and I'm just going to get this thing going before I go back to... No, I'm going to get this thing going, then I'm going to take an hour and hammock in the sun, because it's spring and it's beautiful. This is my weekend. Then I'm going to finish the intonation and set up on the square telly. Let's see what I'm cutting. So bits off, and I'll give these all a clean as always. Again, these have been stuck in the holes for quite a while. By the feel of it, they were quite difficult to come out. But yeah, everything about this is a really nice basic guitar, and having put a few pictures of it up on the We Love Guitars Facebook page, quite a few people like the look of it as well, as I do myself. And the nice thing is there are a couple of manufacturers that make versions of this. Obviously there's Gibson, the original, then currently there's Vintage, makes a very convincing version by all accounts, as does I'm not sure if Epiphone makes one, but certainly people like Antoria do. I remember Arbiter did in the 80s. That's I think where I first saw one like this. I think it was probably late 70s I first saw this shape of guitar, so it's definitely of that era. I'm just taking these off because I want to check that they were spinning a little bit, so I just want to make sure I can strengthen up the join when I can put the guitar back together again. Also going to take the truss rod cover off, and we'll get the neck off as well, and the pickups and the tuners, so that I can give them all a good clean. But even though this wasn't new, it's still in very good condition. Just requires that overall cleaning and decent reloved type of setup, which will make it a really great guitar. And my problem is each time a different shape comes in that I've not played before, I feel really reluctant to sell it. But that's the fun of doing what I do. Get to play on everything, have a go at everything. I really enjoy it. So off come the tuners. I just slack the nuts off at this end, and then we'll undo the screw at the other side, and then spin these off again. Oh, takes off hardware that's going to fall off, bash, slam around and damage things. These P90s I really like them. I don't know much about P90s other than they are single coil pickups, but they're wound more than a conventional Stratocaster type single coil, so it makes them a bit hotter, and they really sound it. They're quite a rich and sort of, I suppose the nearest thing to say, I suppose it is a combination between, or halfway between a humbucker and a single coil. What they don't have is Humcanson properties, although you can buy them more expensive varieties that do have that, but presumably that's another coil added for that purpose. So, come on, you little things. But yeah, they're very nice sounding, and they just seem to do a really simple job. They don't give you any sort of quacky tones like the Stratocaster single coil pickups do. So, you know, it is it's of its era, and it has a very particular sound, the P90. But as I say, I like them. But you wouldn't. There are some certain tunes that you might want to play that you just wouldn't try and play using a P90 equipped guitar, and in a way that's one of the things that I'm not sure about this vintage AV6 Stratocaster that I've got with 3 P90s, and it has this ability to, and I'm not quite sure what it does. It has it's promoted, or was promoted, as having a tone, one of the tone buttons, kind of, I don't know if it described it as coil tapping, because that isn't really possible, but it does something to the P90s when you roll this particular tone switch. And I don't know what it is, given that it probably can't therefore be coil tapping if it's a single coil, but these are fixed quite strongly. If I can't get them off, I can't get them off, and I won't struggle too hard with them. I have a couple of bits of plastic, wedged chamfered plastic for this purpose. Just lets me drop it underneath, or work it underneath these things to get them off. Could really do with a tool for the purpose, but I don't have one, so this just allows me to get a bit of space going underneath them, and I can push 2 bits under and gently sort of prise it off that way. And because it's plastic, it doesn't really do any harm to anything else. bit of waggling required. Yeah, so on my P90 equipped AV6, I really don't know what that special button is doing to the pickups, so I'm going to have to do a bit of research. But anyway, the point I was going to make is that whatever they're doing, it still never returns the sound of a quacky Strat. So, and I probably, in a way, I'm probably more in need of a quacky Strat sound than I am of a interesting 3 P90s rolled into some strange, slightly not so hot humbucker sound. Anyway, loads of irrelevant data, just thinking aloud really, as always. So, knobs successfully off. So everything there. I'm going to take off this scratch plate because I want to give it a clean and clean under it, or clean around and under it. But while we're at it, and I can see the wiring arrangement underneath, which will just be mainly for nosiness sake. And once I've stripped this off and prepared the neck for fret leveling, then I'll just leave it and switch to the other guitar. Because if I get this one done this weekend as well, I'll be ahead of my game for once. Okay, so this has to come off ideally to get the neck off, but it's quite a simple construction. Pickups sit in their slots. There's a back plate for the electrics, and the neck is going to come out. It looks like it's kind of structured very much like the kind of glued neck. The only difference being it's bolted. So I'm going to start with a low torque on this, and you know, we can try as 4 moves it, 3 doesn't, and it tends to be, what I'm doing with this is I'm just building up a sort of mental picture of all the guitars that's not the right thing, a mental picture of all the guitars I've taken the necks off of, as somebody might say, and just so I can sense what the normal torque is for taking the necks off and for doing them up, because it's just quite useful if you've got the same tools all the time. It may well not be a torque wrench with a setting on it, but at least I can constantly work at the same kind of torque setting. So I know that if it comes off on 4, then I'll go on, put it back on with 4, and then hand tighten it to maybe 5. And again, it's to say it's not scientific, but it's quite a good way of making sure you don't over tighten things. So, okay, now this is one of those P90s, a bit like on my, what do you call it, my AV6 guitar, where the P90 is actually bolted to the neck. Its fixing point is actually the neck. So to get the neck out, you've got to take off the P90 screws here in the middle. This is cool. It's easy enough to put back on when your time is right. So I'm just going to wind it all the way out for the time being. Quite long screws, obviously. They go right the way down. Extremely long. Okay, so that then allows me to just pull the pickup to one side and gently kind of lever out pull out the neck. Very snug fit, so I want to do this without overstressing any of the joints. It just comes out quite nicely, and the pickup then is sitting on some pads which I can just drop that back in. There's our neck, very simple, good condition, nice little stepped down joint, but yeah, dead simple, very simple, so easy to work on. I'm going to put this standing up because I know I've got a loose pickup and I can't really screw that back into place. I'll come back to the body afterwards when I need to clean it up and do any work on that, but for now I'm going to get straight into giving the neck a quick naphtha bath. which is just a very simple way of getting all the major surface grime off it, including taking off a few of these stickers if I don't want them. You very quickly get down to the sort of the finish underneath and see what you've got, whether there's any blemishes that you need to be doing anything serious with. The serial number is a metallic foil one, which will take off, comes off very well. These CE ones are paper and they just scratch off, and then you have to use the naphtha as a solvent, if you like, to get rid of the glue that's left behind, but it comes off nicely, very quickly in fact. So there we have the brushed off, cleaned off neck. I'll give it a polish with a cleaner towel. What I'll also do now is, while I'm at it, is just give the fingerboard a good scrub. And this fingerboard definitely had the telltale strands or stripes of grease that actually interestingly build up underneath the strings themselves rather than to the side, so you get these like, tide marks of grease. And taking the grease out using this naphtha, you can see that the guitar neck is pretty dried looking anyway, fretboard, so this is drying it out even more because it's taking some of the oils away off the surface with the finger grease. But when all's done and I've finished the fret dressing process, then I will put some oil back on the fingerboard before I restring it. And just it'll make it look healthier. This of course will dry off and look dry, simple as that. But that's fine for the time being. And then if I use a cleaner towel, I'll just give the whole thing a sort of polish over. You can see it leaves a residue on it, but it comes off very quickly and very easily, leaving you with your quite clean looking and very structurally very sound, simple neck, which shouldn't give us any trouble at all to work on. The nut is attached, it's not dropping off straight away, which is cool. And we've got the components here, which I will also clean later on with some naphtha, because it's lovely to put these things back together again, not only with a accurately levelled neck frets, but to put it back with really nice shiny hardware, because it just makes the whole thing look brand new. Now this neck has an interesting thing going on. So on one side, on the treble side, it is slightly, ever so slightly concave, and on the bass side it's ever so slightly concave until it reaches around about here, in which case it arches upwards a little bit, which again is, as I've been talking about the last couple of days, is often, I think, a function of the thickening of the wood around here. So there's nothing we can do to put an extra bend into that. What we need to do is basically just average out as flat as we can get, and I will be taking my cue off the treble side, only because that's where most of the sort of I suppose if you're playing a lead guitar thing, most of the fretting will be going on, for lead guitar work. So this is a little bit concave, and my thing tells me clockwise we'll level that out a tiny bit. So a 30-degree turn with the thing just as a start. It may be too much, but I'm just going to see what that does to the treble side of things, which is what I'm interested in. And I can see straight away that's leveled that out perfectly on the treble side, and nearly there on the bass side, tiny bit concave, but I'm going to just sort of leave that for a minute or two just to sort of settle in. And while I'm doing that, I'll just have a quick polish up of the body. I'm going to hang this quickly out of the way. I'm getting into it. doesn't get hurt anywhere. And I really just want to throw some naphtha onto this bodywork, just take off some of the dust and the grime down the side of the pickups, that kind of thing. This is a nice, I like this design, I inherently like this design. It's simple, it's uncluttered, and it's got P90s which just seem like quite good pickups for, I don't know, for an electric guitar I guess, but there's something, I don't know, workmanlike about them. Big as the ferrules, let's shake them out. They will come out. I just need to hoik them out with a screwdriver if they want to come out. Come on. If you do pull them out, make sure you know where they go. Some of them, sometimes they want to come out, sometimes they just don't. They're just happy sitting where they are, and then they'll fall out when you don't want them to. So maybe it may be magnetic. Anyway, you can go in the container of bits safely. Okay, so just wanting to get rid of some of the baked on goo from this thing between the pots and wherever, and just part of really assessing if there's anything that needs taken care of, like if there's any structural damage at all, which I don't really think there is. There's that tiny blemish on the bottom edge which actually hardly even needs doing at all, but I might just put a bit of black and a little bit of clear gloss on top of it, or not. So good all around this condition. And again, I'm just conscious all the time of that pickup not being currently attached, so I don't want it dangling, because I could just give myself some wiring problems that I could do without, just by letting it dangle off, strain the solder joints or something. I'm just having a look at those. There's some stuff on the surface here. It's covered by the pick guard anyway, but there's some residue on the surface which is proving a bit more difficult to get off. But generally speaking, that's all round nice condition. Shines up well. And I will, before I put the knobs and whatnot back on, I'll just make sure that the underlying pots are firmly attached and nothing's spinning or going around. But it's looking nice. Yeah, so it's nice to have something that requires so little extra to do, which is sort of why I started this, because I figured I could get this one done as well this weekend, because it is in such a good basic condition. I mean, it's still going to require the same at least 2 hours when it comes to the fret leveling and setup treatment, but structurally that's really nice, great looking thing. Underneath the scratch plate they haven't bothered doing some of the polishing here. They've kind of just not bothered with it, which is okay because it's hidden. But you wouldn't want to leave the scratch plate off without having to do a bit more polishing work. Okay, so neck off. Just gonna, while I'm here, I'm just gonna do the business of masking it off, and then I'll leave that hung up for doing the doing the fret leveling and stuff in between a few other things. We're going to take a run out later on to pick up a guitar I'm buying through Gumtree, which is a Lag Arcane. I've had a Lag previously. It's one of the earlier guitars I bought for Reloved guitars, and it was a very nice guitar, really precise, accurate, precisely intonated little thing. Just a kind of pretty design. And I think the reason I warmed towards the brand is because in the office in London we have a Lag acoustic. First Lag I'd experienced, but a really nice acoustic guitar. I was very, very impressed with the quality, hence I went and tried out the guitars. So this will be my second lag, and I got it for a good haggled price, and I need to be going over to Plymouth anyway to pick up some oak kitchen surface off-cut from somebody's kitchen, which I'm going to use to make the next workbench over there. So it's quite a good progressive weekend as far as cleaning up, tidying up. I am left with a problem with a couple of bikes locked together out in the garden, but the reality is you have to compromise, and I'm doing a lot of this. I'm actually not doing that much riding with my bike, so i.e. none at all for the last year or so. So it's just a matter of where are my priorities. I don't have really space. I don't have space to do both, so I'm just going to sacrifice. The bike has to sit outside because it's more important to have extra space to do this for me at the moment. Okay, so the old routine of preparing some strips of paper for masking off the fingerboard. This is kind of a bit of a well-worn practice now for me. I just kind of happen to know that this pieces of tape chucked onto this thing here give me, are we still batteries? Yeah, gives me enough different sizes or different pieces of different thickness to mask off the entire fretboard of the guitar. So I kind of get to do this with the brain off each time, because it's just kind of becoming a habit now, having done it nearly 100 times. Kids next door, I think, I have a feeling they've got a swimming pool there, and it's March the 21st. Good lord. Judging out by outside, you would think it was summer, and I'm going to go, as soon as I've masked this baby off, I'm going to take off and swing in a hammock for an hour. That's kind of my treat to me for having done so much bloody hard work recently. Okay, so what the hell are we doing this for? As I say, if you've watched any of my other videos, this will be old news to you, but if it's the first one you're watching because you've come via a eBay listing, for example, then what I'm doing here is I'm taking a budget guitar, which nobody really rates very highly, and I'm doing a set number of things to it. And the things that I've found over a year of doing this can make a budget guitar. I'm ruining this ruler, I'm going to have to get a new one. Can make a budget guitar play really, really well. And I'm just lining up to do that small number of things to each of these budget guitars. And it's not magic or voodoo, but it kind of feels like it when you feel the results, because it transforms the way these budget guitars play. And it's hard to think that this guitar, which is a lot less than 100 quid, will end up playing as good as many guitars you'll have played in your time, and me included, because it's not rocket science. You get these number of things right, and your guitar will play brilliantly well, because it's only a piece of wood and some mechanical frets, and basically the mathematics is always pretty much done accurately, i.e. the frets are usually, almost always in the right place, because that's easy to do in a factory. What isn't easy to do is to make them level, and because they're never level, out of my 100 setups over this last year, 100% of guitars have uneven frets, including the custom shop ones, the big brand ones, and including the really expensive exotic ones. They all have uneven frets, and when they have uneven frets, it's that which limits the lowness of the action you can set. So all guitars tend to be sold out of the shop or the factory or the retailer with the action set low, just as low as it can go before it hits the problems that are inherent in the frets. That's basically a way of putting it. And so what I'm doing here is treating that guitar to a fret level, and then we start from a accurate baseline of frets, and then you can have freedom of choice over the action. And I will set this guitar up with a reasonable medium low action, but you can take your screwdriver when you've got the guitar, or if it's your guitar you can take it home and set the action even lower if you want. But I've learned through experience not to set it too low, because some people don't like the small amount of buzz you get even when it plays well, but you're still going to get a little bit of fret buzz at 1mm action at the 22nd fret. But some people really want that, and they can happily live with that because they never play acoustically, it's always amplified. But I've learned to just back it off a little bit. But the underlying frets, when we finish this, will be accurate enough for you to have freedom of choice. That is a start point for the setup. Another major piece that I'm doing as part of this setup will be to set the depth of the nut slots correctly, to give the optimum playing action at that end of the guitar, but also to cure any very common intonation problems that you get when the action is even fractionally too high. It causes severe intonation problems, which most people don't kind of know, but they just experience it as what feels or sounds like an inability to get the damn guitar in tune, or it's in tune when you tune it to a machine, and then you go and fret an open chord like a D or something, and it sounds just a little bit off. And the better your musical ear is, the worse it sounds to you. If you're a newcomer, obviously very often newcomers don't notice it because they're newcomers and maybe don't have a musical ear necessarily, but you certainly reach a point in your life where suddenly you notice that just about every guitar you pick up sounds slightly out of tune when you fret an open chord, even though you've tuned it perfectly. And that is always caused by this, and it is never, in my experience, taken care of in the factory, not even for the most expensive custom guitars. Anyway, so that's what I do. And I suppose if they did take care of it brilliantly, then I wouldn't have so much cool work to do, and I wouldn't enjoy the process. I'd have the luxury or the privilege of seeing the difference it makes to a budget guitar like this, which then I know I can transform the way it plays. So there's my neck prep, and I'm ready to, I've got my neck leveled as much as it will level. I've got my frets marked. I'm going to mark them with marker pen, and I'm going to use a radius block again. I've got various ways of leveling these frets, but I'm just experimenting or trialing different ways, newer ways to me, ones that I guess as a rule are trying to limit to the minimum the amount of material we have to take off to achieve levelness, because that's we don't want to age the frets unnecessarily by over aggressively wearing them away. So what is the radius on this thing? It's not a 9.5, it's not a 10, it's a good wholesome 12. So I'm going to use a 12 block, which I have here, and I've got some sandpaper nicely fixed to the underside of that ready, and when I'm ready I'm just going to use that radius block to radius this. And if I just give it a quick push over the top, what it will tell me straight away is how even or uneven this is, because straight away I'll see which frets are scraped and which are still showing as black. Now really interestingly, most of the frets, almost all of them except a few at this end, have already scraped some of the top off, and that tells me this neck is incredibly good condition in terms of the frets, and unusually good. I used to record the percentages exactly. I've kind of stopped doing that because I've sort of proved what I wanted to prove. Now I can tell from just what I'm seeing here that this is an unusually good neck to begin with. So, you know, budget guitar, hardly any money at all, and it's got a better quality frets, or better leveled frets, than many an expensive custom guitar that's come through the doors here. And this tells me that I will be effectively pretty much level before too long. But I'm going to stop right now because I'm going to take a break in the sun and come back and continue this guitar later sometime. Well, I'll just stare at it for ages until it obeys my command to switch off. Good. Just going outside into the sunshine. It's too nice. Too nice to stay in. I've brought my camera out with me. Oh, sorry about that. Somebody's doing some angle grinding or some such. Chopping up children. Anyway, this is the joy. The joy of being in the office, yeah. And it's the thrill of being in your hammock and working with your GoPro, that Go Anywhere GoPro. I've brought my Crafter Cruiser neck out with me. Probably pointing the wrong direction really, because this is in bright sunshine. Brought the Crafter Cruiser neck to do some the word is reprofiling, and I've done the what have I done already? I've done the levelling. Now I'm going to use the medium size of this whilst shouting over the top of angle grinding to reprofile these things. I'm going to need to use two hands, so it's not really going to work very well. I don't have a special bracket. Do you know what? I'm going to use the jumbo side. Yeah, I'm going to use the jumbo side. I don't have a thing for attaching this conveniently to the thing. I mean, I could go like that, but it doesn't really show what I'm doing. I could sit on it and it goes like that, but it doesn't really work. So apart from putting it on top of a post over there and pointing it downwards, which I could probably do until it runs out of batteries. God damn it!
Speed camera.
Oh God. Yeah, so I'm going to carry on. Oh Lord, that's tipping over. That looks really dodgy. If that goes over, that's the end of my camera work. Ah. That looks so unsafe. If I get into my hammock gently, oh, it's still working. Anyway, I won't use all of this. I'll cut this bit out because it's a bit boring. But, so I'm going to use my jumbo file. Take these babies.
God, you know what? Creatures that get caught in these plastic.
They never get out.
It's awful. Awful to think that they die with that stuff around them. Easy to see how.
Well, I'll take it back. It's not the jumbo side I need really. It's the medium size side. Hard life working out in the garden in the sunshine. The light's a bit funny, so I can't quite tell what I'm doing compared to normal. all right.
The lights that come. It's called daylight.
Yeah, sunshine. I haven't got too long anyway because I've got to go out and pick up another guitar and a workbench.
Do they know Yummy? Do they know Yummy?
Yummy's not such a regular visitor to the videos. Mostly Morris. Yummy does come in. So it's working pretty well. Is that the door?
Yeah.
Huh?
Jack 007. Stanley.
Dr. Stanley. Yeah. In the SAS, isn't it?
That's pretty cool.
Stop this video because I just needed you to be able to see this stage of the process.
The hammocks on the central part.
How it's a central part. I just needed you to see this ongoing part of the process so that you knew that it was being done in your name. I'm going to grab this now. Ah! Oh, lordy. Right. Can't quite handle this with one hand. That's better. Okay. Put it there. Put it there. Put it there. Put it there. No, not really very safe at all. Okay, I think I'll just put it inside and call it quits. Stick that back on there. I will edit this, but I just wanted you to see that part of the process ongoing so it didn't suddenly just appear to be done. Okay, talk to you in a bit. Back with the Crafter Crafter by Cruiser. Anyway, got a Morris in the way at the moment, but that's not so bad. This guitar neck has surprised me in that it is one of the I've done it again every single time. I've tipped over every single container load of graphite powder that I've had, and it's every single one of them has just gone all over the work surface. I'm going to just end up vacuuming it out. It's obviously not working for me having it sitting there in a little top. I need it in some sort of container that isn't going to spill. Right, so there we go. Okay, so back to the Crafter Cruiser. This neck, when I started doing the leveling on this, I was really surprised that this appeared to be very level, unusually level frets for a start. There were quite a few down here that needed to be leveled, but the radius block took material off here really uniformly very quickly. So it was all, it tells you that it was all almost level. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on some let's put some bright light on. That's quite nice. I'm just going to basically, because we've done this with the 220 sandpaper attached to the radius block and a 300 grit tool to reprofile it, I'm going to now go straight to the 600 grit paper just to now start the process of polishing it up. It's a bit noisy, so I'm going to use my fingers to begin with because I want the paper to get over the frets. Sorry Morris, is that too noisy for you? Can you sit on there? Morris, come on here. Yeah, I want my fingers to go inside the up and down over the fret rather than create a flat spot on top, and I need them to reach all these parts of the fret. So just to begin with, I'll use my fingers and then I'll switch to the foam block in a minute. Now, I didn't really intend to set this guitar up this weekend, so I may find myself one whole guitar ahead of the game, which is good because it will give me some chance next weekend to get onto some owners' guitars, which I've got quite a few. None of them expressly urgent, but I have a few sort of standing around ready to go, so it'd be really good to focus on those next weekend instead of buy and sell guitars. And this means I can basically sell a few this week and create some space in the house because I've got quite a lot of stuff in stock at the moment. So again, still using my fingers at the moment, which is okay, but sometimes you end up giving yourself blisters if you're not careful. With this, I'm doing the levelling the way I've done for most of the last few guitars, which is by using the radius block instead of Crimson Guitars fret levelling file, which is actually a very vicious beast. I mean, it's very effective, but it really removes a lot of metal and leaves very, very deep scratches, which for speed it's hugely efficient, but it leaves you with quite a polishing job to do afterwards, and that job requires that you manage to polish out some pretty big scratches, which if you don't and they get left on your frets, then they totally ruin the playing experience. So that's the little downside of using that kind of file. It looks like this, but it's very, very rough. I mean, a really meaty file. So it's so evil that Thomas drew some kind of evil teeth on it. But the last couple of necks I found I've done using the radius block and adhesive, self-adhesive sandpaper technique, and that's actually proved to be a very much milder approach, but providing there's not too much heavy duty levelling to do, it's quite a nice way of doing it. If there is a lot of heavy levelling to get done, then it can be a bit too slow and you can be there forever. Also, the other thing about the sort of positive, I suppose, about this one is it doesn't really respect the radius, because the radius block, when it goes up and down like this, if the radius is half an inch out, the radius block will force the removal of all these edges first before it kind of makes contact in the middle. This one, on the other hand, is if you are starting with a set of frets which don't conform to correct radius, whereas the radius block will force you to kind of pretty much, you could go as far as wearing the edges almost down flat in order to touch the middle. It's not ideal, but if you are starting with something that's over time become a different radius, that can happen. Whereas this will do the job kind of almost independent of what radius is, because it follows, you follow the radius by hand, and whatever the radius is, this thing does slices or strips. It doesn't impose a radius. That's what I'm trying to say. This doesn't impose a new radius on you, whereas if you use a 12-inch radius block, which I did on this, but it will impose that radius onto this thing, and if it happens to begin by not being 12-inch radius, you will end up wearing the frets away to try and make it 12-inch radius. So you've really got to know. So I guess another way of putting it is, if you came across a neck that over time had become something in between a 12, let's say a 12 and a 9, then I would recommend that you didn't try and radius it down with one of these blocks. It'd be far better to use something like this, or a box section with sandpaper, but to free form the radius so that you didn't end up really imposing a strict radius on it. Because if you impose the radius on it with a radius block, what happens is you'll do it at the expense of the fret metal, and you might end up with something that looks like it's a 12-inch radius, but there's no fret metal on the edges, so it's literally unplayable. But hey, you've still got your 12-inch radius out of it, but it's kind of counterproductive. Okay, so there's the sanding done with the 600, and now we're just going to go to the micro mesh set, which goes from 1500 through to 12,000, and this will take us all the way through from sanding to polishing in a kind of very smooth process. And I'm just going to, because we've gone from 600 to 1500, I'm going to spend a little bit of extra time on here to let this 1500 work out all those 600 grip scratches, which are going to be a lot. I'll also switch this round while I'm doing it as well. This Crafter Cruiser has been a real surprise, a real pleasant surprise. I'm really glad to have found it, and it's one of the kind of guitars that I will probably look out for more such things. It's a bit simple, but really nice to play. And I suspect by the time I've got these frets polished and the guitar back together, feel like a really nice instrument, and way above its actual price range, or price point, as people in the business say. Which is what I like about this whole process, is the fact that we're making this neck more accurate than most Gibson guitars that come to you off the peg in music shops. Most of those, not all, because some will have been through the clever machinery, but mostly they won't have had the frets levelled. Strangely, bizarrely, how it seems. Okay, so I'm kind of getting into polish mode here now, so it's not so important to worry about digging into the frets, because we're not in danger of putting any flat spots on with this grade paper at this point in time. This is really now starting to polish the whole lot up. And we can kind of zoom through now to the end. 4,000. 3 more sheets after this to go. And we're pretty much ready to play after that. It'll be in really shiny condition then. And we can peel off the paper. Looking forward to setting up the Lag Arcane. Not a very well known brand, the Lag brand. Very, very good quality in my book. And another one of these undersung hidden gems, I suppose you could call it. Okay. Morris is just sitting here doing nothing. Just company. Quite like most of that. Right then. Set of micro mesh complete. Put the radius block away up here, out of harm's way. And now we can begin the process of removing the tape. This is where we'll probably need to give it another clean down because there's a lot of dust builds up in this process, but this is where we get to enjoy the fruits of the hard work. And in total, this takes about an hour and a half to do all of this. Seems like a lot in some ways, but if you're going to keep a guitar like this for years, then it's not going to be that much when you think about the years of pleasure you get out of playing it. It's a small chunk of time, relatively small, but it's enough to start to give you some indication of why it's not done in the factories of guitar manufacturing plants around the world, because it appears to be only two ways of doing it. One is with the expensive Plek type of lasery controlled machine, which levels frets and cuts nut slots and does lots of clever things accurately. But that seems to be definitely a sort of premium exception to the rule. It's definitely not what you get with your budget guitar, and actually certainly until recently it isn't been what you get with your 1500 quid American Gibson either. So it's either that expensive premium option where I guess fret leveling is considered some kind of real add-on special, or it's get someone to do it by hand where they are effectively doing something like this. And as you can see, it takes an hour and a half of my time. I might be expensive because I'm based in Europe and we charge a lot per hour compared to somebody perhaps in the Far East who doesn't get paid much or wherever. But even still, the amount of time it takes and the amount of labour it requires is going to put a dent in somebody's sort of profit model, especially in a business where the margins are tight. So you can see I can now just pull off these bits of paper, and there's a few little strips left over occasionally. I can roll those out with my thumb. And the fingerboard underneath is just beautifully protected and as clean as it was when we went in, and ready to have a bit of oil to just sort of hydrate it out and darken the colour a little bit. But pretty much great condition, and now we have this lovely set of levelled frets. A couple of bits of paper stuck in the corners there, which I want to get out. Yeah, beautiful levelled frets for the first time ever in the guitar's history. And now I'm going to just chuck this paper away, give it a dousing and rub down with the naphtha stuff, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of oil, and once I've done that it'll be sort of ready to restring. I'll put the net back on and restring. Okay. Sometimes it's good to do this because you remove some of the you get a bit of glue from the masking tape sticks to the neck sometimes, a little bit there. It's plain hard to get. So the naphtha works as quite a good solvent for the glue, and lifts it off. It needs a bit of elbow grease at times because it doesn't just fall off, but it does come off. Okay, nice. Now I will do the oily bit. Find me a rag to do it with. Yeah, that'll do. Note to self, must buy more rags and some more oil actually, just about run out. Okay, so as far as the oil goes, I just want enough to add a layer to the fingerboard, and I'll rub it in a bit so it kind of settles in, but in some ways it does two things really. It sort of works as a bit of a cleaner, and so it removes some of the grime. You can see it's definitely pulling off some dirt even while I'm rubbing it in. It removes a bit more dirt, cleans the fingerboard a little bit more, and of course it leaves it looking a bit of a deeper colour than it was. So nice looking overall. In fact, that one of the things I said to the seller of this guitar, when he asked me how do you tell whether a guitar is, what are the signs you can look for to see whether a guitar has been used or not. One of them is to look at the fingerboard, and a used guitar tends to have light coloured fingerboard just either side of the frets, then it goes darker and more oiled in the middle, and then lighter up against the frets. And you can, it's like that when people just play the guitar, but you see it even more pronounced when people play it and then occasionally oil it, because they never, very rarely get right up to the edges. So a new guitar the fingerboard will look like it's the same colour all the way. So now we have, I'm going to put the neck on, then I'm going to put this guitar out of its way and concentrate on the component parts which I haven't cleaned yet. So what I just need for this is the ferrules, so the grommets, ferrules, whatever. And I want the neck bolts, which interestingly on this guitar are not very large at all. Quite delicate little things. In fact, there are 4 of them. Are they the same length? No, they're not. It's interesting. I'm just going to double check something here. I think that's okay. That's the ones that come with the strap buttons, and that's the strap button. So yeah, we have 2 different lengths, which is interesting. I can probably quite easily work out which is which. In fact, I can see from here which is which. But that surprised me a little bit. I'm just going to give these a quick clean. Not very easy to get into there, but anyway. So we've got 2 short and 2 long ones, and we're going to go in and put the torque to 4 on the screwdriver, just so that we can not over stress the screws. So if you remember, we have the pickup, which, let's have a look. Should we put the pickup in afterwards? Doesn't really matter which. It probably helps to put it in first so that it doesn't move anywhere. So we can do that. So this is going into the wood of the heel, and it just fits all the way in. I could probably have done this a bit quicker with the power driver, but I've got that set up to do the neck bolts. I'm just going to get this in fairly tight, because I just want to be able to turn it over without these screws sticking up out of the way. And I'm still holding the neck in the joint, because I don't want it to move anywhere. I'm going to flip it over, holding it in position, and then drop the ferrules in, and then put the screws in. These little screws I'm doing now are just attaching the P90 pickup to the heel of the neck, tongue of the neck, whatever you might call it, the bit that's sticking out. Okay, so now I'm holding the guitar neck into the slot nicely in place, and we've got 2 different lengths now. We've got a thicker part there and a thinner part at the back. So I'm going to assume this could always be problematic. I'm going to assume that because there's a thicker part of the neck here, I'm going to go with the smaller screws at the back and the taller screws at the front where there's more material for them both to go into. I'm just going to put one on for a minute while I hold this thing in place, and I'm going to go in with the back one. It goes in nice and smooth. It's always a good test. If you've got the thing in the right place, things just fall back into place as if they've always belonged there. If you ever, at this stage, if you ever notice something straining to go in, then you need to stop because something's not aligned correctly. I'm going to now go fully in with a torque, go diagonally, torque this one and that one, and then diagonally, and then flip it over and just look visually to make sure that this neck is in the right place and everything's sitting correctly. And I'm just going to then do the last couple of turns on the P90 screws that hold it in place, and they don't have to be over tight. But Morris wants to go out. Go on, son. Off you go. Come on. Okay. Right. So that's the neck and the body reacquainted with each other. Looks kind of nice. I'm going to take a break for a minute while I just clean the various components. Basically just going to tip them all out and get fruity with my naphtha, and so I'm just going to come back when it's done, and I'm going to then reassemble it all onto the guitar. Hey, good morning. We're in the heading towards the last bit of the Crafter Cruiser setup. So neck back on, all the hardware back on. I've glued these stop posts in. They were actually pulling forward, but now they're still pulling forward a little bit, but they're glued in place, so they're under a bit more secure. Sorry, neighbours yelling next door. So now the main thing left to do on this is to adjust the action over the first fret, and then to just tweak the playing action down here a little bit more and just get it absolutely the way I want it, and then basically intonate it, which shouldn't be too hard. So I'm going to go straight into this thing, set the nut action, and I might be interrupted here because a friend might be arriving at this point in time, in which case he can make an appearance on the video. This is very noisy next door, so please bear with me. 9, 11, 16. Okay, so I've got super slinky strings on here, so they match this set of files, so I'll just be using these in the correct sequence. Sometimes I use them out of sequence because of the fact I'm using 10 strings or something. Now, the thing I'm going to look for here quickly is just to find the actual clearance over here in playing position. Now, it's pretty high, so I'm just going to start with the metric, and I'll start with, I'll grab a handful of 0.9 because I think it's almost as high as that. Close, it's probably 0.8 then, but that's way higher than I would want it. And I guess the question is, what should it be? Just about 0.8. What should it be? Well, when you put a capo on, not my favourite kind of capo, by the way. When you do put a capo on, the action over the new first fret, which is wherever you capo it, the next fret up, that action is minuscule, and yet you know it plays, and it plays very well. It's very effortless to play. If you ever noticed how when you put a capo on, suddenly bar chords become really easy. That's because with a capo on, this becomes a 0 fret, and this action over here is a remarkably small 0.1, around about 0.1. It depends how high you have it down this end, but on average it's about 0.1. So you can see that the action currently set where the strings come off the nut, that action is about 0.8. That's 8 times what it needs to be, and that additional amount of height causes the strings to go sharp when you fret notes down here, because you have to push so hard. And that's the biggest single screw up on budget guitars and expensive guitars, by the way. So what I'm going to do, and what I do with every guitar, is I just reset these to what they should be. And I'm going to go for a kind of conservative 0.3. I could go as low as 0.1 if I wanted to, but just to be on the safe side, I'll go for a 0.3, because I know that a 0.3 will significantly improve the playing action and will not cause us any worries about going too low. It'll improve the playing action, but it will also cure any intonation problems, which I guarantee you it has. And those problems, you won't notice them, they won't announce themselves to you. You'll experience them as just a feeling of open chords, just somehow not being in tune. Right? You'll tune the guitar up endlessly and grab a D or something like that and just wonder why it just sounds a little bit odd or off, a bit muddy, a bit discordant is probably the right word. And you know, considering you might have just set the tuning of all the open strings using a proper tuner. There you go. This is this nut is quite brittle plastic, so it cuts quite quickly. Yeah, so the experience of the intonation problems at this end, because of the incorrect too much height over the first fret, is experienced as just a kind of gnawing annoyance that you just can't seem to get the thing in tune. And most people, in my experience, kind of blame themselves and end up thinking it's just something they can't get it right, and they keep tuning, retuning endlessly. And that was my experience, and I've spoken to a number of people who've had the same experience. In fact, who've brought me their guitars specifically because that's the experience they're having, and they've come across me talking about it on a video, and they know that's the problem they've got, so they bring the guitar to me, which is great. But it makes such a substantial difference. So what I do is I make these slots, cut these slots to the right height, and then what you get is a much easier guitar to play, and presto, the tuning or intonation issues go away. So suddenly you can fret open chords down here and they sound the way they should, which is perfectly in tune, because you're not pressing any notes sharp in your efforts to fret the notes, which is really a big problem. So I've said it on loads of videos, so apologies to anyone who's watching this again and hearing me say it again and again. But if there was, oh look, there's somebody doing the gardening as well. If there was one thing you were going to do to improve the playability of your guitar, even if you didn't do the fret leveling that I always do, because that takes a lot of time and a fair bit of effort, but if there's one single job, or if you had maybe 25 quid or whatever, and you said to me, do one thing to my guitar, it would be this. This will transform how your guitar feels. So much so that you kind of won't recognise it immediately afterwards. It will feel that much different for the sake of removing this extra, in this case it's going to be 0.4 of a millimetre. Now it doesn't sound like much, but actually 0.4 of a millimetre in these terms is a huge amount, and it's nearly half a millimetre, which is yeah, when it comes to the action of the strings over the first fret, that is a mega amount, mega distance. Now what I'm doing is once I've got the string at the right, actually this one's not, I don't like that. What's wrong with that one? That was too low. Is it too low for my liking? Could I have yeah, I think I've overcooked one. Yep, I have. It's this nut, I don't like it. probably end up replacing it with something else that works better. Soz, folks. In fact, I'm going to replace it with a black one anyway. But yeah, that's not good. I'll start this again. The material is too fragile. It's gone too fast. So I'm going to start this baby again. Sorry, crafter. Better to get it right. So you can see on these videos that there are mistakes, and sometimes things just go wrong like that, and you just have to be prepared for it. And when it does go wrong, you have to just basically sacrifice a nut. I could repair it with the super glue and loofah baking powder stuff, but I don't want to do it because I don't like the material the nut's made of particularly anyway. It's sort of very brittle plastic. So I'm going to use this opportunity to knock it out and put something else in. I've got quite a few to choose from, but the question is which material would I prefer. What I don't think I've got any brass ones. So just for the purpose of knocking this nut out, I'm going to take the thing off. Now, I've got a whole range. I've got plasticky white ones, plasticky black ones. I've got bone here. That's what I really want. Bone, they're quite high, so I'll have to do quite a bit of work on those, but I do want a bone nut. That's what I want. Am I crazy? No, I want a bone nut. Is that bone? No. Is this bone? Yes. That's bone. I've got two bone nuts. One, in fact, they're exactly the same colour. I also have a bit of a... Yeah. Hello. Yeah, come around. I'm live on video as you speak. Come in. Did you find it in the end?
Yeah.
Nice one. Come in. I'm just about to doing a shoot.
And we're on YouTube.
So this is Mike. Say hello, Mike.
Hello, Mike.
And Mike's come around to say hello and see the studio and hang out, or the workshop. I'm just going to do the dreadful knocking off a nut because I don't like it. There you go.
Okay.
How's things?
Yeah, good thanks.
Did you get lost on your way out here?
That was just the numbering system around here.
It's not so easy, is it? So what'll it be? Will it be bone or will it be this tusky stuff? I like bone, to be honest. There's a lot of cutting to do on that one, but what the hell? Yeah, let's do bone. I'll just glue this in, then I'll stop the video and we'll go and have a cup of tea. Been a busy one this weekend. I managed to get three guitars done.
Yeah, I saw
Oh
on,
shit, that's no good. Thanks for a broken bottle. Nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Come out the side of the bottle. Fantastic. Not what you want. Yeah, it's three for a change. It's quite unusual to get so many done. That is going out of circulation before I have that accident again. Dead. Yeah, it feels like kind of full on. But my shop front is looking a bit bare on the YouTube thing, so I've got to get a couple more out there. Now, is this going to work or is this going to spit all over the place? It's doing the same. How weird. Let's do it away from the guitar. I don't think they've ever made a sensible super glue dispenser in my experience. They're always going to lead you to trouble somewhere. Get out of the way. God, it's a big old nut, that is. Sit in there for a minute. My missus is feeling a bit ropey, so she's not looking great. She's not feeling great is what I mean. But
Can't put that on the video.
no, yeah, quick edit, I'll be dead. Okay, it's a very big nut, but I'll take it down, I'll reshape it, but I just want a proper bone instead of toy plastic stuff. Much nicer material. Right, I'm going to stop this, come back to you. Anyway, the job will be to come and redo these slots, and once I've got the slots to the right height, and when this is finally stuck, when I've got the slots to the right height, then what I'm going to do is to reshape the nut once it's glued in place and the slots are right, because there's no point in shaping the nut until the slots are cut correctly. That's in place. I'll leave that for a bit. Go and make a cup of tea. See you in a minute. Hey, back again. Took some time out to chat with Mike about Relove Guitar's upcoming website, so I'm back into the mode of just getting a new nut organised for this crafter here. So I've just been resizing a bone nut, taking a little bit of a while to do it. And in doing so, I earlier had a little bit of a super glue accident, you might have seen, so I've just had to clean up that the impact of that. So I'm just going to polish out this area around the truss rod cover for a minute, and that just take care of the spilt super glue, sadly. So where were we? Oh yes, well, just going to put this nut in and then cut it down, and it's bone this time, so it'll be a much easier nut to work with, and it won't surprise me like the last one did. Yes, so Mike's a local guitar player and guitar enthusiast, and he also runs a small IT company, so we've come to an arrangement where he's going to do a website for Relove Guitars, and I'm going to set up some guitars for him, which is a very good useful local exchange type of thing. And what was really good from my perspective is that to have him come out and play some of the guitars I've got here, he was able to see or feel very quickly the kind of action that he's going to get for his guitar, which is great. So I don't have to sort of hope that he likes what I can do. He's already experienced it, which makes the whole thing a lot easier. Okay, this is just doing a bit of sort of polishing up. The super glue container puked super glue out the side, which then blobbed on here, and it was super glue sort of dries before you can do anything to rescue it, because most of the rain. But thankfully the micro mesh is the sort of saviour, gets us out of trouble. Beautiful day out here in Dartmoor, and apparently I was just seeing on the news this morning that, I don't know how true this is, but some people reckon it's going to be 80 degrees in the next week or two, running up to Easter, whenever that is, which I think is quite an amazing example of global warming, if that's the case. It's nice in one sense, but kind of scary in another. Okay. Right. Probably need a little bit of a polishing stuff in here as well, which is let's just see how much of it overlaps. Yeah, we'll need a little bit. Trying to keep this away from the strings, but I'll do it now while we're here, otherwise I'll be trying to work around the truss rod cover, which is a bit of a pain. So I'm getting a bit fiddly because I am working around these strings. And it was going on the strings, of course, which will be beyond the nut, so it won't really affect it. Not ideal to be changing the nut after having strung the guitar, what I thought was for the final time or ready to play, but it just having cut it too low on that particular slot, then it became necessary to do this, and necessary to get it right, because it's worth doing right. So let's clean that up a little bit. That's nice. That's pretty much ready to go. Just clean in the slot. There you go. Brilliant scratch remover stuff. Just brings that back up nicely. So didn't realise that my phone is in the way, making all kinds of bleeping noises. Sorry about that. I'll do one more little bit of polishing stuff with the number 2 solution. Yes, so we're going to have a Reloved Guitars website in the nearish future in exchange for me sorting out all of Mike's guitars. It seems a fair exchange. I think kind of more satisfying than anything is that is to know that Mike's gone away back to his guitar playing friends, and we'll be very complimentary about what I do here, and that will be extremely valuable from a reputation point of view, to have people say, wow, there's this guy doing this, you should take your guitar. It's that sort of word of mouth thing that is always the best thing to have in business. You really can't beat it. Okay, so this is now ready to drop in, and I'm now going to glue underside and the top, but I do know, sorry, the underside and the side, but this glue dispenser is really not really what I want. It's really dodgy. So I want to mix a combination of on the bottom and on the facing edge, and then I'll clamp it a little bit. While I was preparing this nut, one of the things that I was able to do is, in preparing it, I got to file down. Obviously I had to file down the nut quite a bit, but in filing it down I got myself a nice supply of bone dust, man, really useful supply of bone dust, and that will allow me, well, keeping that safe, because I can use that for doing repairs at other times where it's critical to repair something. So I'm just putting that to rest and let that set in place, and then I'll come back and start recutting the slots. And then once I've done that, it'll be a matter of once the slots are right, then I can take all the excess off the top with a file. So a little bit slowed me down there a little bit, but it's better to get this right and make it look absolutely spot on. So I'm going to put it on hold, make a cup of tea and come back when it's ready to cut the nut slots again.